GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, brought to you by Better Live Than Dead of the Gear Radio Network. This is episode 110. It's just me, Brian Wolfe, at Wolfe BLTD, flying solo here on the podcast today, talking about the Buffalo Bills of the Miami Dolphins. Before we get started here, always want to let you know you can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well to stay up to date on the latest podcasts. We're here to talk about the disappointing ending to the first NFL game played inside the Devil's asshole. In case you missed it, the Buffalo Bills fell to the Miami Dolphins 21-19 in the hottest football game, personally, I think I've ever seen. Players were falling down as if they were shot by snipers. It was rough to watch, but a previously depleted Buffalo Bills suffered even more losses on Sunday. Heading into Sunday's matchup, safety Micah Hyde was placed on the injured reserve with a neck injury ending his season, reported to be a herniated disc, ruled out prior to opening kickoff as well. Cornerback Dane Jackson, defensive tackle Ed Oliver, defensive tackle Jordan Phillips, and safety Jordan Poyer did not play on Sunday. Defensive tackle Brandon Bryan and defensive tackle Prince Emili were signed from the practice squad to the active roster, and offensive lineman Greg Mance and defensive back Jamarcus Ingram were elevated from the practice squad to the active roster for Sunday's game. Now, real quick, too, I think I glossed over this one. Normally, I'm flying with John Cimino at IamJCMoney on Twitter, but right now, breaking on the fourth wall, I am actively on vacation here in Delaware. You know, like from Wayne's World. Hi, I'm in Delaware. But it's not a bad gig. I mean, right now, we're supposed to be in Orlando. And as I'm sure if you have turned on a television at any point in time, you know that there is currently a Category 4, almost Category 5 hurricane barreling down on the state of Florida. So we made the right choice to phone a friend, phone a family member, and we ended up here in Delaware. So back to talking about the Buffalo Bills. Before we jump into the three big things, we must point out the one thing that would have lasted and lived in Buffalo Bills lore had they pulled out the victory: Thomas Morstead's ass punt. Something we've never seen before. I can't remember ever seeing. The only other point of reference that we have as Buffalo sports fans years ago, the butt goal, where, the goaltender, the puck went up in the air, tucked into his pants, the goaltender rolls into the net, they say that's a goal. So again, it was a very funny moment. But that's kind of the theme of the game on Sunday. As you'll see, it's if something broke a different way, the game would have gone a different way for sure, but rolling on to our three big things here really quick. I'm not going to keep you guys here for very long, because how long do you want to listen to me talk about the Buffalo Bills? I hope just long enough to listen to the podcast, but right now, as I said, breaking on the fourth wall, it's about 7:20 in the morning here on September 28th on Wednesday morning. Just chilling in a basement by myself. It's a very cozy room. It's a Bills cave. There's Bills photos on the wall. Josh Allen, Jim Kelly. You got a picture of Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and a big, nice Buffalo Bills logo on the wall. Fantastic place to be on this. I'm on a big old couch too, very comfy. But beside that, let's go to the three big things here. Brought to you by PuckLuck.com. Hockey underway. Training camps here. The Buffalo Sabres have started playing games. So make sure you get over to our friends over at PuckLuck.com, your one-stop resource for all of your NHL sports betting action. PuckLuck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Not to worry. PuckLuck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Also, please note, though, PuckLuck.com is in no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the NHLPA. PuckLuck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. Now, the first of the three big things here this week, running down the offensive stats. As you may have seen during this game, Josh Allen had an absolute game again. He was 42 of 63 passing for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 8 carries for 47 yards. Per at Mike Heim on Twitter, as always, it's Mike, Haim. He's always got the great stats. That's one of my favorite follows on Twitter whenever sports stats are happening, because breaking down how I get the stats here real quick. Buffalo Bills PR, the one thing that they do. I love following them because they always have the latest news, the latest injury updates, and the best Buffalo Bills related stats, except for when the Buffalo Bills lose, because they just log off of Twitter and stop posting as if it never happened, which is kind of frustrating. It makes the job a little more difficult, but that's why you find other really good, intelligent people to follow. Back to the stats here. Allen's 63 attempts on Sunday are a new personal record and a new club single-game record as well. Allen's 400 passing yard day gives him 3 career games with 400-plus yards, a new club record. Drew Bledsoe, the former franchise leader, had 2 400-plus yard games with Buffalo. Both came in 2002. Allen completed at least 1 pass to 11 different receivers. Mike Heim also points out that sets a new club single-game record as well. The previous record was 10 different receivers, eclipsed most recently on 12/28/20. So December 28th, 2020. Hey, that's my wife's birthday. At the New England Patriots. Also, Josh Allen started off the game 11 for 11, a personal record. That's one thing I think we've seen this year is Ken Dorsey's offense focuses on Josh Allen making those nice, smart passes to get wide receivers or running backs into a position where they can get yards after the catch, because I know last year that was a big thing where the Buffalo Bills were, it was all or nothing, it felt like. So getting that yards after the catch, it works out pretty well, especially, we'll talk about it in just a minute here, Devin Singletary had a great day because they were putting him in positions to get yards after the catch. But Josh Allen was sacked 4 times on Sunday and recorded 3 fumbles, 1 lost and 1 recovered by Allen. As mentioned, running back Devin Singletary had a career day, 9 receptions and 11 targets for 78 yards, both career highs, and 1 receiving touchdown. He also recorded 9 carries for 13 yards. Wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie, 7 receptions on 9 targets for 76 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs, 7 receptions on 11 targets for 74 yards. Mike Heim points out, at Mike Heim, again, it's Mike Haim on Twitter. Stephon Diggs' 7,727 reception yards ranks 3rd in a player's first 8 seasons after being drafted in the 5th round or later. Second, former New Orleans Saints wide receiver Marquise Colston. He was drafted in the 7th round. He had 8,337 yards in his first 8 seasons. And first, former Pittsburgh wide receiver, former Tampa Bay wide receiver, former Buffalo Bills wide receiver, depending on who you trust here. Wide receiver Antonio Brown, former 6th-round pick, or a 6th-round pick, not even former because it never goes away, 9,910 yards in his first 8 seasons. Some injuries. Wide receiver Jake Kumaro left the game with an ankle injury, did not return. Offensive lineman Ryan Bates left with a head injury, and I don't believe he returned. I'm not 100% sure about that one. But here's where things get weird for the Buffalo Bills. They outpossessed Miami 40 minutes and 40 seconds to 19 minutes and 20 seconds. That's 90 total plays on offense compared to Miami's only 39. It was pointed out by Mike Heim as well. 90 plays is the 3rd highest amount of games, or amount of plays in a game, in team history. The record being 91 happened November 14th, 1994 at Pittsburgh, and September 1st at the New York Giants. It was an overtime game as well. Buffalo Bills beat reporter Sal Capaccio points out, too, this game marked only the 2nd time in a National Football League game in the last 16 seasons that a team lost while outgaining an opponent by 285 yards or more. Buffalo had 497 total yards, the Dolphins 212. Oddly enough, the only other time that this has happened is when the Miami Dolphins beat the Chargers in 2020, while being outgained by 326 yards. So the offense did not struggle on Sunday for sure. Really, the only thing that the offense seemed to struggle with was once they got in the red zone, they were unable to put the ball in the end zone, whether it was ineffectiveness. You saw late in the game that Josh Allen had what appeared to be a surefire touchdown, but he short-armed the throw, and he knew it as soon as he let the ball go. You had a couple miscommunications, a couple dropped balls. So again, it was a situation where the opportunities were certainly there, but the Buffalo Bills just seemed to have an issue with finishing. So that is something we'll discuss a little further in the podcast here with what went wrong and our third of the three big things. But before we get there, we're going to wrap up the defense, our second of the three big things here. First off, defensive end Greg Rousseau. He continued his hot start to the season. He recorded 1.5 sacks, his second career multi-sack game. Safety Damar Hamlin recorded a half a sack, which is the first recorded in his career. Again, as mentioned, Buffalo held Miami to just 212 total yards. Also, bad news here, cornerback Christian Benford, a rash of injuries on Sunday. Christian Benford being one of them, suffered a broken hand, I believe it was, during the game. He returned to play kick coverage with a club on his hand, but did not return to play on defense. Sean McDermott did come out a few days ago and say that Benford will miss a few weeks. So Buffalo's cornerback room is very thin. Something we'll discuss here in just a few minutes as well. But before we get there, we're going to take a quick commercial break here on Trust the Podcast, and we will be back with more. Our third of the three big things, and looking forward to next week's matchup. Stick around for the commercials. We'll be right back here on the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And we welcome you back to Trust the Podcast. We are on our third of the three big things, and this is a very interesting topic here because trying to figure out what went wrong on Sunday with the Buffalo Bills. And if you look at it, first off, a lot of missed opportunities. Tyler Bass missed a 38-yard field goal, which appeared to be tipped. It looked like it was redirected when the ball left his foot. Gabriel Davis had a lock of a touchdown, but could not complete the process of a catch. There was a botch snap before halftime that prevents a field goal attempt. Greg Van Roten snapped the ball to Josh Allen. It was a bad exchange, and instead of spiking the ball, Josh Allen threw it out to Stephon Diggs, and they weren't able to get out of bounds in time. Time expired, and then went to halftime. Matt Milano dropped a surefire pick six. And also, Buffalo had a potential chance at a game-winning field goal attempt as time expired, but could not get the ball spiked. Got the pass off to Isaiah McKenzie, who ran across the middle, did not get out of bounds. And by the time he was tackled, obviously, as a football player or a football team does, the attempt to get back to the line was a little bit impeded, but that's just the gamesmanship side of things. Buffalo, again, was unable to get the ball snapped off in time to spike it for a field goal attempt and ended up losing 21-19 at that point. But Buffalo also had 7 penalties for 52 yards. Now, I know it's not popular to sit back and point at the referees and say, hey, this felt kind of one-sided, but it certainly felt like the Buffalo Bills were I don't know the best way to say this without sounding like a complete homer, but it wasn't like the field was tilted in one direction, because that's an over-exaggeration, but it certainly felt like when momentum was going one way, so were the referees' calls. And I mean, that's probably the best way to put it, where if Buffalo was gaining momentum, then there would come a soul-crushing penalty. So whether it was just inefficiency on the Buffalo Bills, that's something you got to work on. But, every week the calls can't be perfect. You try to get them to be perfect, but we all know we saw some plays where there was a play where Josh Allen went to go throw the ball, and as he went to go scramble to reset to throw the ball, his helmet snaps over to the side. You're like, okay, that was a face mask, and there's a referee staring at it. Nothing happened. So stuff like that. At the end of the day, it's frustrating to see during a game, but you would hope, and we all know that through a 17-game season, through an 18-week regular season, those calls tend to even themselves out at some point in time. It just sucks to see in a game where the Buffalo Bills were not able to win. It was also really hot. I don't know if anybody noticed that. I mean, there was a lot of talk about that. The heat index, I believe, was about 100 degrees. The Buffalo Bills, because the Miami Dolphins are not stupid, when they rebuilt their stadium and kind of completely redid Hard Rock Stadium, they made sure that the Dolphins sideline was in the shade. During a 1 o'clock game, the Dolphins will be in the shade the entire game. The opposing team will not be. Cramps were definitely the story of the second half here. Multiple Bills players were being seen stretched out in the sideline along with receiving fluids, with temperatures hitting the upper 90s and, like I said, heat index 100 or 100 plus, honestly. Offensive lineman Spencer Brown left the game with a heat-related illness. Wide receivers Isaiah McKenzie, tight end Dawson Knox, offensive lineman Greg Van Roten, wide receiver Stephon Diggs, among the players who played through heat-related issues or illness. Nate Geary of WGR points out the Buffalo Bills went into Week 3 down both starting safeties, both starting corners, both starting defensive tackles, and their starting center. They left down their backup center, starting right guard, starting right tackle, third cornerback, and fifth wide receiver. Now, one thing there is that's why the depth comes obviously into play, but you can't predict a weekend like this in Miami. It became less of a try to win the game as much as it did to be, okay, let's just try to survive and get out of here in one piece, because at this point in time, things just got ridiculous at some point in time. Another thing I want to point out too, Al Butler, he is a senior sports writer at United Press International. He tweeted out something from the Dan Le Batard show on yesterday, so on Tuesday, that Stephon Diggs told Dan Le Batard that he's, quote, never been that tired in my life when asked about facing the Miami Dolphins on Sunday. Said he never had an IV in both arms before he did during the matchup on Sunday. Quote, I had full body cramps. So again, a lot of players were suffering through it, and that's just, look at peak athletes. We've all seen Stephon Diggs. The dude is chiseled from stone, and he was having trouble getting through the game. I can't imagine how you or I would do playing in that kind of weather. I probably would just die. I would just, start to sizzle like a piece of bacon. But one thing that's been discussed this week that is, I really wanted to get John's input on this, but obviously being on vacation, it's a little difficult to coordinate our schedule, so it is what it is. We'll discuss it at some point in time. But it seems like the sports pundits in the greater Buffalo area are hanging their hats on the fact that the Buffalo Bills are now 0-7 in one-score games dating back to 2020. I don't necessarily think this is something to get worried about, because you look on the flip side, the Buffalo Bills' last 10 wins have come by double digits. So they have close games, but most of the time because they're winning a lot more than they're losing, obviously, at this point, they're able to handle their opponents. Now, the one thing that at yards per pass pointed out, this is another reason I don't really get too worried about the Buffalo Bills being 0-7 in one-score games. It says, they said, quote, since November 2020, the Bills have lost 10 times. Of those 10 games, one was a Hail Mary. That was the Arizona game. One was a slip on a quarterback sneak. That was the Tennessee game on Monday Night Football. One was to Urban Meyer. That was obviously Jacksonville. One was in a tornado, the Bills and Patriots game in Buffalo. One was by 13 seconds, obviously the Chiefs. And then one was all of the nonsense that we saw on Sunday in Miami. So, again, if it continues to be an issue where the Buffalo Bills can't win close games, sure. But right now, that was a game where you just don't, you just look back on it and it's almost like you throw the tape out and you just say, look at, they played their asses off. The Buffalo Bills did. They did everything they needed to do to win, aside from obviously scoring touchdowns in goal-to-go situations. But with that being said, you look at this, you go, hey, look at, like Von Miller. The one thing Von Miller said was, you always want to go 17-0, and it's irrational to think that way, but as a competitor, that's how they think. And he pointed out that when Peyton Manning was on the Broncos, they started off 1-3, ended up winning 9 straight games, ended up winning the Super Bowl. So it's all about how you react to the adversity. So we'll see how the Buffalo Bills react on Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens. But before we get there, our look ahead. Some injury news. Tackle Tommy Doyle was placed on the IR with an ACL injury. Buffalo announced the signing of guard/tackle Justin Murray, previously of the Arizona Cardinals. Also, the Buffalo Bills announced the signing of veteran cornerback Xavier Rhodes, who will certainly step in. He was signed to the practice squad. Odds are he will be playing very soon. He most recently played for the Indianapolis Colts, started 29 games over 2 seasons. He spent the first 7 years of his career with the Minnesota Vikings. The Bills' defensive coordinator, Leslie Frazier, was the coach of the Vikings when Rhodes was drafted 25th overall in 2013. It seems very smart for the Buffalo Bills to go out and pick up defensive help, obviously because Dane Jackson is out with a neck injury. Christian Benford had surgery on his broken right hand. He'll miss a couple weeks. You've got Kyer Elam, Saran Neal, Cam Lewis, Kyler McMichael on the practice squad, Jamarcus Ingram on the practice squad. So they've got to figure out a way to get through this kind of injury bug right now, but it's something you kind of have to deal with and something you have to prepare yourself for because not everybody's going to stay healthy. And with that being said, you roll right into week 4. The Buffalo Bills are in Baltimore to take on the Baltimore Ravens. That is Sunday, October 2nd at 1 p.m. on CBS. The Baltimore Ravens are coming off a big victory against the New England Patriots in week 3, 37-26. Quarterback Lamar Jackson, again, showing why he deserves to get the bag, to get all of the money he can, as much guaranteed money as he deserves, or as he feel he deserves. He was 18 for 29, with 218 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception with 11 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown. The Baltimore defense also picked off New England quarterback Mac Jones 3 times in the matchup. What to watch for in this one? It starts and it ends with Lamar Jackson. The Buffalo Bills have to do their best to contain quarterback Lamar Jackson, not only as a passer, but as a rusher, and thoughts being that they would be able to do that, but then again, crazier things have happened. My thought being the Buffalo Bills will be able to bounce back and win this one. It's not necessarily a must-win, but we'll see how Thursday Night Football plays out with the Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals. If the Bengals win, obviously the Buffalo Bills can draw even with the Miami Dolphins in the AFC East. But if Miami continues to win, games will quickly become must-wins for the Buffalo Bills. But then again, we know how this team rolls. They just have to make the playoffs. That's where the sights continue to be set on. But the Buffalo Bills are playing some damn good football, and boy, are they fun to watch. So with that being said, we are rolling up on about 20 minutes of you listening to me ramble on about the Buffalo Bills. So we'll call it a podcast there. I am Ryan Wolfe at WolfeBLTD. I appreciate so much you tuning in, sticking around, trusting the podcast, listening to me talk about the Buffalo Bills this week without John. Again, John at IamJCMoney. I feel like every time I say John Cimino, I always follow with at IamJCMoney, but we are Trust the Podcast. You are not. We will catch you sometime very soon next week to talk about the Bills and Ravens. But as always, thank you for tuning in, and go Bills.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.